There's an old TV commercial from the 70s and 80s whose slogan was, "When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen." Well, when Neil deGrasse Tyson talks, very important people listen. So it would be a shame if during his lecture this afternoon it were interrupted by the bling of a text, or the incoming tweet, or the ringing of a cell phone. So this is my way of encouraging all of you to make sure you don't have that awkward moment when your phone rings and the entire room looks around to see who didn't turn their phone off. I would also ask that you try and squelch the flash on your camera. Unless you've got some monster flash on that camera, it's not going to do anything at this distance. For those of you using social media today, our hashtag for UM Dream Big is, wait for it, UM Dream Big.
This is, in fact, my first public lecture ever in Canada, and it's an honor to deliver it here, and I'm continually impressed by the energy for space that I see in Canada, even in the United States, when people wane in this regard. I look to Canada and say, we need some more of that. So this talk is going to be a celebration of space, but I think more important, it's also a warning sign for how occasionally people don't think about it the right way. And it's a call to action, but it's a call to look at the dangers of inaction, right? So I call this sort of, I don't know if you can see this slide. Like, people like way at the edge probably can't. So I'll just be totally talking about, I'll be on it for you, okay? For the people right on the edge. Sky's not the limit. You know what the limit is? Like, we are the limit, okay? So it's a sort of a warning sign that I'll be sharing with you for this talk. And you know what's often true with talks like this? They're like loosely veiled commercials that your speaker has to sell you a book or something like that. That's often what happens. And this is no exception, I just want to say. No, actually, no. Some of this is in a book, but I don't like giving book talks. That's why I write books, so I don't have to keep talking about it. That's why I write books. So this is an amalgam of many different aspects of things I've been thinking about, things that in my judgment are relevant to this audience. And so, oh, by the way, let me just skip that here. Where'd that come? Yeah, okay. I just want to remind you of where we are. You can't read that. I'm just saying at this minute, right now, we've got an SUV-sized rover on Mars, and it runs on solar power and a little bit of other power, but basically, we've got a probe en route to Pluto. I can't read that, I'm going to read it to you. Probe en route to Pluto. We've got a probe orbiting Saturn. The one on route to Pluto is called the New Horizons mission. Pluto is finally getting some attention that it had long never deserved. And, no, we all love Pluto. We're in orbit around Saturn with the Cassini spacecraft. We are We've got an orbit around Mercury. What else? We're finding Goldilocks exoplanets. These are planets orbiting other stars at the right distance from their host star so that you can sustain liquid water. And every place on Earth we find liquid water, we find life. So if you're going to look for life in the universe, the Goldilocks planet is a good place to start. We're cataloging them. But we discovered the Higgs boson, the God particle. All right? If you were going to be a particle, that's the one you probably want to be, right? Because your field grants mass to other particles that go by. That's just, you know, you're sitting up on the chair. Yep, you got proton, I give you that. Electron. No mass for you today. But just imagine if you abused that power. That would be interesting. We're looking for dark matter, particles. But so it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. And much of these discoveries are derived, of course, from spaceborne experiments. But some of you may know that I have a checkered relationship with Pluto. And I just wanted to put some of that to rest before we actually get to the meat of the talk. So I just want to say, Pluto, it's still not a planet, right? Get over it. No, I have more convincing argument for you than that. By the way, Pluto was the only planet discovered by an American. And so I think the resistance to Pluto's demotion was greatest in America. But an American could have never named it Pluto, interestingly. It was named by a girl in England who was very well connected, apparently. She had just learned her Roman gods. Her father was head of the Cambridge Library, who was friends with the Astronomer Royal, who knew the Lowell Observatory in Arizona, and so this all got connected. And he asked her what would she call it. She said Pluto, and it stuck. The reason why an American could have never called it Pluto is because at the time, in the 1920s, there was a widely advertised mineral laxative called Pluto water, recommended by doctors everywhere for relief of constipation. When nature won't, Pluto will. You see? There you go, object. Or Pluto. But I'm associated with the demotion of Pluto, not because I had anything to do with it, although maybe I'm an accessory. I drove the getaway car, all right? In New York, we opened a new facility in the year 2000, and we sort of read where things were headed. We did something different with Pluto, and organized it and placed it with the other icy bodies in the outer solar system, the Kuiper belt of comets. That's all we did. That's what we did. Well, that hit page 1 of the New York Times. Pluto not a planet? Only in New York. This, and I, for 6 years, I got hate mail from elementary school children, right? Here's one of the letters. I'll have to read it to you, okay? Dear scientist, what do you call Pluto if it's not a planet anymore? If you make it a planet again, all the science books will be right. See, so here's a child worried about the science books, not wanting them to be wrong. You want to be the opposite of that, all right? You want them to be sort of keep moving with what's up to date. If there are people who live there, they won't exist. Why can't Pluto be a planet? If it's small, it doesn't mean it doesn't have to be a planet anymore. Some people like Pluto. If it doesn't exist, then they don't have a favorite planet. Please write back, but not in cursive because I can't read in cursive. But my favorite letter from Pluto Pluto I got just like a year ago. It was a 22-year-old student. And he said, "Dear Dr. Tyson, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I wrote you a letter complaining that you demoted Pluto. Well, I've since studied the problem, and now I agree with you entirely. And I'm sorry that in my original letter, I called you a poo-poo head." Signed, it was like a straight letter. One of my favorite Pluto cartoons is this one. A victim of downsizing, poor Pluto. Pluto gets just shown as a beggar on the street corner. Did the guy who spoke up loudly a few slides ago, are you still there? Where are you? Was it you the one? No, you weren't there. Someone else, I heard the sound back there. Oh, everyone pointing. I can triangulate. Let's triangulate on the hands. A, there are 6 moons in the solar system bigger than Pluto. B, our moon is bigger than Pluto. C, our moon has 5 times the mass of Pluto. D, Pluto is more than half made of ice. If you brought Pluto to where Earth is right now, heat from the sun would evaporate the ice and it would grow a tail. And that is no kind of behavior for a planet. You can't have planets with tails. I'm sorry. Pluto's orbit crosses the orbit of another planet. How misbehaved can you get? Comets cross the orbits of other planets. So we just reassigned Pluto to join other icy brethren in the outer solar system that were freshly discovered in the middle and late 1990s. Now there are thousands of these frozen bodies in the outer solar system. So I think Pluto's happier there. It's with friends. And it's one of the biggest of its kind out there, rather than being the puniest planet. So, get over it. Okay, so now, I want to just intro space in a rather morbid way. There are a lot of people who say, Earth is a haven for life. Oh, Earth is beautiful. Okay, let me just sort of tell you something here, that Earth actually is trying its hardest to kill you. If you don't realize this, I want to tell you. First, 97% of all species that ever lived on this Earth are now extinct. There's Mother Earth for you. We have earthquakes. I got the list. What's my list? Yeah, so earthquakes and, volcanoes and tsunamis and hurricanes, typhoons, tornadoes, droughts, floods, disease, plague, heat waves. If you tally the death toll of all blizzards, sure. Tally the death toll. It is staggering, especially when you consider the hurricanes and the earthquakes and drought. Earth is really just trying to kill us all. And it's not only Earth, the universe wants to kill you as well, right? And the universe is awesome at it. So there's a list, so what do I have here? Gamma ray bursts. These are the largest explosions in the universe since the Big Bang. All right, and these things beam serious energy out into the universe. If one of these bursts happened in our galaxy, aimed towards Earth, it would overrun the ozone layer, the high energy radiation from it. That's the first wave. The second wave, once the ozone layer is overrun, the rest of the radiation comes all the way down to the surface, and it will completely mess with your DNA. Gamma rays are what made the Hulk big, green, and ugly, okay? Just an FYI on exposure to gamma rays. A lesser thing, but more common, supernova explosions. There's some extinction episodes in the fossil record where people are investigating whether there was a nearby supernova whose energy overrode the biosphere at the time. Black holes, you want to avoid these at all costs. I'm just saying. We have solar storms. These things send high energy particles to Earth. We're protected from most of them with our magnetic field. The particles see our magnetic field, they split positive and negative, and they spiral down towards the poles, that's fine. And it renders the atmosphere a glow. And we call that aurora. In the north, aurora borealis. In the south, aurora australis. And we look at them to see how pretty it is, not really thinking how deadly they are. There are comet impacts, asteroid impacts. These are bad things. The dinosaurs, our favorite extinct animals, went extinct 65 million years ago from an asteroid impact. And we think of the dinosaurs as being, no, 70% of the life forms on Earth went extinct in that episode. This is the universe just messing with us, all right? And that asteroid, we know where it hit. The tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. We found the crater. Actually, oil drillers found the crater. They have something called a gravitometer, and it shows where there are mass anomalies in the ground, so you can find out whether there's bedrock or oil. They have different mass signatures on the local gravity, and they found this pattern that formed a circle in the compressed rock that formed a circle. And this circle is like hundreds of miles in circumference. And so they dug it up, dated the rim 65 million years ago. There it is. The smoke and the gun. Killer asteroids. Yeah, we got it. This would have been a bad day on Earth. You didn't want to be around for that one. Artists love showing death and destruction on Earth. Again, for like the 8 people who don't have the right angle to see this, this is an artist rendering of a bad day on Earth, right? Maybe you can see this screen. Can you guys see this screen? Yeah, that's this screen up here. So you guys here, just check this out. You got that? Can you see that? Yeah. Yeah. Can you see it on the email? You got that? Yeah, okay. All right. 65, the one that took out the dinosaurs, 65 million years ago, was about the size of Mount Everest, a little larger. And again, these are artists attempting to draw what this would look like. This probably comes closest to what happened. So, and we have some pterodactyls checking out what the situation. You know, I once showed this image to a high school class. And in high school, who sits in the front row? The nerds, of course. And the cool people sit in the back row. So a question came from the front row. And I'm saying, this will be an enlightened question, because these are the best students who are in the front row. So, Dr. Tyson, is that an actual photograph? How do you, as an educator, what do you do in that situation? So I thought to myself, all right, suppose I said yes. Then I said, oh, yes, okay, the pterodactyl had a digital camera, and from the fossil we recovered the SD chip, put it in, and we got the photos. There comes a time when educators really just want to give up. We just passed the 1-year anniversary. We're like 1 year, 1 month anniversary of the asteroid that exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia, in the Ural Mountains. Were you around thinking about, were you connected to the news a year ago when this happened? Yeah. Okay, I was, all right, because I'm asleep. And 4:30 in the morning, my phone rings. Usually just somebody dies when that happens, right? So I answer it. Hello, Dr. Tyson, this is NBC's The Today Show. We'd like you to comment on an asteroid that just exploded over Russia. I said, what? No, that's not scheduled yet. For, what do you, we have a video, 1,000 people were, at the time they said, struck by the asteroid. I said, okay, show me the video. And I'm like the 12th person to view this video. And there it is, because in Russia and in many parts of Europe, there are front-facing cameras on your vehicles. So anybody who is driving, you see everything out the front window. And so the people just driving along. It's very early in the morning for them. And there it was. Was it in the morning or evening? Time. But anyhow, the sun isn't fully up yet, and you see the streak in the sky, and then it explodes, and it's like brighter than the sun. And so people wonder, what we know is an asteroid. Not big enough to have caught very early, all right, because if it's really big, we know it's coming. Small enough to sort of get in basically under our radar, and you only notice it when it's too late. Well, I have that original video. It's right here, and let me see if it works. See if I can play this. Oh, this slide I first showed 8 weeks after it happened, and so I don't know if the video on it works. Yeah, I don't know if I can make the video. You know, you know what I didn't do? I didn't fully make the connection to it. But anyhow, in the sky, the asteroid comes and it's brighter than the sun. It washes out the entire view. Now here's what happened. People who didn't remember Physics 101, this is what they did. They're in there eating breakfast, and this Steven Spielberg E.T. brightness light comes in their window, okay? Out of nowhere. So what do? They said, oh, I wonder what that light is. They get up from the chair, go to the window, look out the window. Light travels faster than sound. Right when everybody's looking out the window, bam! The shockwave hits. 1,000 people were injured. 1,500 people were injured because of flying glass. The shockwave from this asteroid blasted thousands of windows in the city, knocked down walls, broke ceilings. And so this was the greatest disaster you can have without anybody dying. Nobody died. But it's a shot across our bow. The universe wants to kill us, and we have a space program to do something about it. I've tweeted jokingly, but saddeningly, I don't want to be the laughing stock of aliens in the Milky Way galaxy if they ended up learning that we went extinct from an asteroid, even though we had a space program that could have done something about it. That'd just be embarrassing. I don't want to be that. We go extinct, and then the roaches and rats rise up in our place. Let's visit their museums in 1,000 years. There'll be bones of humans on display in their natural history museums. Species that would formerly rule the earth. They were too stupid to fund their space program and went extinct from an asteroid, right? The rats would be saying, They probably wouldn't say too stupid. They'd say didn't have the foresight. Didn't have the foresight. You know the main thing that's holding back the size of rats is that they want to hide from us. And so they have to fit inside of pipes and nooks and crannies. If we were not here to exterminate the rats that couldn't fit into the pipes, the bigger ones would just get bigger. So there's actually a book called, I forgot the exact title, After Humans or something like that. And it shows all the animals that sort of rise up and fill up our niche. That's what we did. You took out the dinosaurs, our mammal ancestors, in every place but Kentucky. Our mammal ancestors came running underfoot, avoiding being lunch for T-Rex. You take out T-Rex, mammals could ascend to something more ambitious than just a tree shrew. And this Russian meteor, what do we have here? 17 meters across, about the size of this stage area. All right, how fast was it go? It weighed about, what do we go here? Yeah, so 17 meters across. It weighed 10,000 tons. It's going 40,000, I'm sorry, I'm using miles here, miles per hour. You guys have heard of miles, right? Do a quick conversion there. What do we get? We get sort of 60,000 kilometers an hour. That's fast. This sucker's moving, and if you're going that fast and you're made of stone, the atmosphere is a brick wall to you. And you basically explode in the atmosphere. And that's what this did. It exploded 20 miles up with an energy of 500 kilotons of TNT, which is how we measure the energy of explosions. That is 25 times the energy of the atom bomb that exploded over Hiroshima. The atom bomb that exploded over Hiroshima exploded half a mile up. It was a calculated height. If you have it explode on impact, half the energy goes into making a crater, rather than killing people. This is wartime, so they actually calculate this. Well, had that asteroid exploded half a mile up, no one who witnessed it would be alive to talk about it. No buildings would have been left standing. We would come upon the region later and wonder what happened. So, and this is a little one. That's the size of this stage. You start getting mountain-sized asteroids coming in and you don't know about it. That's the universe trying to kill you. And so it shattered, that number went up since I made this slide. It's 1,500 people. By the way, there's an asteroid the size of your stadium out there named Apophis. Apophis, the Egyptian god of darkness and evil, yeah. Why is Apophis named that? Well, we discovered Apophis. I got people who do this. I didn't discover it. We have asteroid hunters who discovered Apophis. In 2004, in December, Apophis was discovered. You do a quick orbit calculation, you find out it's intersecting the orbit of the Earth. So we have a whole satchel of names of evil gods after whom we name these asteroids. Had it not gone across Earth's orbit, we'd call it Tiffany or something, or Bambi, something non-threatening, right? This sucker is called Apophis. It's the size of a stadium. There's some ideas on how to deflect it. It's going to have a close approach in April, in the year 2029. And April 13th, actually, which is a Friday. Just disclosure here, just so you know. Come back to me when you find out about that. But it's Friday the 13th, April 2029, Apophis, something the size of your stadium, will come close enough to Earth to dip below our orbiting satellites. It'll be the biggest, closest thing we have ever measured to come by Earth. This is basically a buzz cut. We will learn on that pass whether the asteroid will hit us 7 years later. 7 years later. 7 years later, if it hits us, it'll hit the west coast of the United States in the ocean, 500 kilometers west of Santa Monica. It'll create a tsunami 5 stories tall. 5 stories tall. It'll basically wipe clean the entire west coast of the United States and North America. So up in Canada, you feel some of this, but the Aleutian Islands. But nobody has to die. All you have to do is evacuate the entire west coast of North America at the right time, right? But you know, there's going to be 2 people who will die. You know who they are. Remember, it's coming closer to California here, so there'll be the stupid surfer who wants to surf the tsunami. You know, I don't know if you have them in Canada, but we got them in America, all right? And then there's, you ever see the weatherman who's always trying to get the camera guy closer to the surf? You ever see it? If you look over here where the line the cameraman escapes, you know, kind of imagine that. A dead surfer and a dead weatherman, I think we can. People react interestingly if they know they're going to die the next day. The New York Post polled some people and asked them, if you knew the asteroid was going to come tomorrow, what would you do today? So I'll read these to you. These are kind of fun. There's a guy named Brad Clemmer, 19. He's a college student, Reading, Pennsylvania. I'd probably go to church, and then I'd get drunk. Okay? This is a common juxtaposition. Church and alcohol in the final days. I'd spend all the money I have on women and alcohol. I'd fly to the Bahamas, sit on a beach with a tequila until the asteroid hit. Elizabeth Pena, research assistant. I'd get married immediately, since I'm going to later this year anyway. We'd forget about the honeymoon. We'd just start getting loaded right after the wedding, okay? Pete Calabiska, 19, college student. I'd get together with all my friends and my family, have a big farewell party where we'd all get drunk. And I'd go on a date with Cindy Crawford. I think that last one is not going to happen. Right? So what disturbs me a little, I don't want to say disturb, what concerns me is no one here is saying, I try to find a way to deflect it. I try to find a way to save Earth. The people who think that way are people trained at solving problems we've never seen before. These are engineers, scientists, STEM professionals, science, technology, engineering, and math. You want those people around you. Because when disaster strikes, most people that I've seen they say, run, buy toilet paper, or whatever you're carrying with you as you escape the scene of the disaster, water, whatever. I want the people to say, how can I stop that? Everybody doesn't have to think that way, but you just need enough so that we can all gather around and understand what that support would be. You don't want this situation. These are two dinosaurs. One is saying to the other, all I'm saying is now is the time to develop the technology to deflect an asteroid. My favorite poster of them all, ready for this? My favorite. Asteroids are nature's way of asking, how's that space program coming along? Let me just tell you, often when we look back through time and we find visionaries and we quote them and say, oh, look how much they knew. Look at what insight they brought to our future. Well, if you look hard enough, you can find some really embarrassing, bone-headed quotes. And I just want to look at a little bit of the history of space exploration to see what we were up against as a culture and as a society. So I'll read this to you. This is from an editorial in the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. On the eve of the 20th century, they said, by the way, in the year 1900, we were riding high. We had airships, dirigibles, the railroads across the country, the internal combustion engine automobile was developed by Carl Benz, and roads were all over, and so people were riding high. It is scarcely possible that the 20th century will witness improvements in transportation that will be as great as were those in the 19th century. 3 years later, we invent the airplane. So this is a completely bone-headed statement. It is someone who thinks that what's around them is somehow the pinnacle of what can be achieved. So it's people like this who you don't want in charge of anything, right? Oh. Now, these are people who should know better. How about, man will not fly for 50 years. married to his brother Orville in 1901. You think they would know better? All right, so now you get the airplane invented. So now look what people say. No flying machine will ever fly from New York to Paris. Orville Wright, 1908. We forget these quotes. These are out there. We've sifted through the countless stuff people talk about, pick the one that happened to be right and say, oh, he's a visionary. Let's move forward 40 years. Landing and moving around on the moon offers so many serious problems for human beings that it may take science another 200 years to lick them. Science Digest, August 1948. 200 years? How many more years did it take to lick them? 20 years. 20. Okay, so here's what happened. These decades, no one had any understanding of the importance of technology, or how creative we are as a species, or how resources, when properly allocated in a nation, can actually bring a pace of discovery far beyond what you might have imagined. So the last possible statement that could be made in that vein was in February 1957. Here we go. Man will never reach the moon regardless of all future scientific advances. Lee DeForest, radio pioneer. All right, so watch what happens. At the end of 1957, Sputnik gets launched by the Soviet Union. And all of a sudden, space is pierced. It is, you can reach it because we have hardware in orbit around the Earth. And all of a sudden, what went from pessimistic outlooks of our future in space became over-optimistic outlooks for our future in space. People said, we go into space, we can do anything at all, and it'll just happen. So, Russia goes into space. We found NASA in 1958. 1962, I just learned, Canada launched its first satellite. Canada's in there with us. And so here's the Wall Street Journal, 1966. The Apollo program is well underway. Funding is flowing. Here we go. The most ambitious United States space endeavor in the years ahead will be the campaign to land men on Mars. Most experts estimate that can be accomplished by 1985. 1985. That's like 30 years ago. They're speaking 20 years into the future about a time 30 years ago to us, about an accomplishment that we are nowhere near reaching. Wall Street Journal. A manned lunar base will be in existence by 1986. The Futurist. Spoken in 1967. Here's my favorite one. By the year 2000, 50,000 people will be living and working in space. How many people were living and working in space in the year 2000? 3. 3 astronauts on the space station. There's also this tendency to oversell achievements. And it's mixed that with a faulty memory, and you don't even understand what's driving things. So let's go back to Yuri Gagarin, launched into orbit by the Soviet Union. He's the fourth mammal species to achieve this feat. So here's what happened. So we came to the 50th anniversary of this, and everyone was waiting for me to tweet something on it. I don't tweet unless there's something I can say. Not, oh, congratulations, 50th anniversary. I don't want this decade to be the decade of the 50th anniversaries of things that happened in the 1960s. That means you're not actually doing anything. You're just looking back and saying, hey, that was cool, let's commemorate that. Do you think in the 1960s they were commemorating anything that happened in the 19-teens? Anyone old enough, do you remember? Were we talking about stuff that happened in the 19-teens? Look what they did in 1916. Look what they did in 1912. No, we were thinking about the future. When you think about the future, the past recedes fast. So, there I am tweeting, I said, I gotta say something different. So I said, he's the 4th mammal species to achieve this feat. So we're all celebrating a man going into space, but he was preceded by, what's my list? Okay. Dogs, guinea pigs, mice, then you had Yuri Gagarin, then you had chimpanzee, then you had an American human. So in the United States, there's John Glenn, he's the hero and everything, but it's like, what does it mean? Yeah, we can put heroes up, but be honest about what's going on. Otherwise, it comes back at you. It comes back to bite you because you're building a falsehood. And this goes on. Check this out. So, in the United States, we think of ourselves as pioneers in space because we landed on the moon, walked on the moon. Cool, I got that. But pioneer means you did stuff first. If you tallied who did stuff first in space, the United States loses that contest. All right? Here's the Soviet Union and stuff they did first in space. They invented the rocket formula, which is why the ships have to be so large. They need fuel to put fuel into orbit to burn that fuel later. All right? This is the problem of rockets. That's why the Saturn V rocket, the astronauts are the upper little bitty part, and all the rest is a rocket bomb. All of it is fuel. All the rest. So, the rocket formula, first satellite in orbit, first animal in space, first human in space, first woman in space, first black person in space. That was someone from Cuba. They were the first to land on the moon with a spacecraft. The first lunar rover, first to photograph the far side. Earthrise, first to land on Venus, Mars, first spacewalk, first ship-to-ship transmission, first space station. Longest time logged in space, and they have the safest manned vehicle there ever was in the Soyuz capsule. So, no, this is hard-earned. So, America, we did a few things, okay? We had the first space docking, first humans to leave orbit, first to land humans on the moon. We were the first to cross the asteroid belt, first to achieve hyperbolic velocity, the speed necessary to escape the solar system entirely and never come back. This is good. I don't want to belittle this, but we have to be honest about what your achievements are. And part of that goes to what I call Apollo worship. People say, yeah, that was our golden age. You know what it is? It's necrophilia is what it is. It's necrophilia. If you haven't done anything great lately, you just bring up older stuff and talk about it. Say, look at how great we were, so think of us as great now. No, it doesn't work that way. No, I don't think so. In fact, there is no technology of anything where you look back at the first of its kind and say, boy, look at how they did it back then. Isn't that great? You walk by the Saturn V rocket today, it's like the apes in the monolith in 2001. Say, how did they do this? Wow, this thing went to the moon because we can't do it today. There is no ship in the world capable of taking a human out of low Earth orbit. Stuff we were doing routinely in the 1960s, nobody can do today. This feels a little bit like Europeans during the Dark Ages looking at the architecture of the Romans, left over from the Roman Empire, wondering how to build an arch, wondering how to build a dome. All that knowledge got lost. I'll just show you an example of how this works. So, this is an image of very early skates. We don't look at that and say, gee, I wish I had a pair of those. You look at these and say, I wish I had a pair of those, okay? Skating technology has moved forward, and we do not worship the first of its kind. How about the first cell phone? Yeah, oh my gosh. I want one of those. Yeah, back then, you got a date at the bar if you pulled out one of these shoulder-launched cell phones, okay? But we don't revere that. You know, we revere other things. And I think that's the iPhone 3, even. The very first automobile, it would look great in a museum. That's actually Carl Benz, the first internal combustion engine. They had cars that ran on steam, but that's just like a locomotive on the road. This was the real true first invention, but they've come a long way. This is the modern Mercedes-Benz with knife opening. So cars have come a long way. Airplanes have come a long way. There's Wilbur and Orville Wright wondering if they'll ever fly from New York to Paris, and in the first plane. But planes have come a long way. Now we've got, what, the Airbus 380? Look at this sucker. This thing, it looks like an anaconda that just swallowed a pig, right? This thing, I've flown on this thing. It's like, you don't even know you're on an airplane. You don't even know you're taking off. That's how big it is. You just get on it, and then you get off, and you're in a whole other country, right? So planes have come a long way, although this is not the coolest of the planes. You know, there's a cool plane for you, the Concorde. Why does the Concorde look so awesome? You know why? Because there hasn't been a better plane since then. That is a faster plane, a cooler looking plane, a more modern plane. That's why this still looks awesome. Because we've not gone anyplace since then. That's the measure of whether you're actually in the business or not. The liquid-fueled rocket, Robert Goddard. Now we've got rockets launching, you know, satellites, we're launching things all the time. The X-1, I think this was, the first plane to break the sound barrier. Back then, this looked awesome. Look, there's a plane with a pointy nose. Wow, look at that, that's really fast. If you're around back then, that's what you're thinking. But we kept going forward. And probably the pinnacle of this design is the SR-71. The US Air Force, SR-71. An unpublicized top speed. It can pass Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound, a little bit. This is cool. We have one of these on the deck of the Intrepid aircraft carrier docked in Manhattan, in New York. And you just come up and say, wow, that's cool. But wait a minute, this was designed back in the 1970s. It's 40 years old. Why does it look cool? We don't have anything better than it. That's why this looks cool. Nothing has flown faster than this since. There's a stagnation there. You won't even know what this is. This is like a really early, one of the first prototype televisions. Everyone under 25 in the audience said, wow, you guys really had it bad. It's not how bad this was compared to today, it's how good this was compared to anything that came before it. That's what you have to be thinking here. But of course, TV has moved on, and now we have, of course, big flat panel. It goes on and on and on. How about the first computer? Yeah. How's that for a 4-function calculator right there? An entire room. An entire room. Then we had sort of the first desktop computer right there. Now, if you had one of those, you got dates if you had one of those too. The very first mouse. That's the actual very first mouse. And the mice have now come, and now they're out. We don't even use them anymore. The second desktop computer, this is the Macintosh, advertised during the Super Bowl in the year 1984. But we've moved on, you know, computers are thin and powerful. So I ask you, I show you the Saturn V rocket. The only spacecraft to ever leave Earth for another destination. It is a stunning achievement in engineering and in science, and in ambition, in funding, in vision statement. You kind of need all of that to keep that adventure going. Funding, ambition, vision statement. But I tell you now, not only do we not even have the Saturn V rocket, there is not another picture that I can show you of something that has come since then. We have several Saturn V's on display. One of them is in captivity in Huntsville, Alabama. This one is in Houston. And just for context, the nozzle, there's 5 nozzles in the bottom. The nozzle is large enough for you to have like a tea party for 8 in each nozzle. And the entire length is fuel. So I don't know what the next one will be. But there's some energy in the air internationally and here in Canada. And so I like this fact. I just want to share some of this enthusiasm with you, some of this vision statement that you need. I have a collection of currency from around the world, pre-Euro currency, where countries put their own on their currency. Typically they're presidents and kings and queens and things, but occasionally they'll put scientists. So you won't be able to see all the detail on this, but I have bills from different countries around the world. So the upper right is Tesla, the Yugoslavian note. We have Copernicus in the middle right. There's Poland. We have Marconi from Italy in the bottom right. He pioneered radio wave communication. We have Alexandra Volta. What did we name after him? The volt, not the car, but the unit of electricity, of electromotive force. We have Volta. We have Antoine Saint-Exupéry in the middle left. Not a scientist, but an aviator. Wrote the book, The Little Prince. They put The Little Prince on the currency, the 50 francs. And there's a guy in the upper left, I keep forgetting his name, but he's Bulgarian. He's a scientist. Flip over the currency, and you get the iconography of their trade. On the upper right is an electrical discharge machine that Tesla developed. We have a pseudo-heliocentric illustration. The artist, I think, was given a little too much freedom there. We have the Volta's monument in the bottom left, and we see the biplane used by Exupéry. Let's keep going. We have money made of polymer in Romania. This is the front and back side in the upper left. Romania had a total solar eclipse go across their country, and that's the eclipse track shown on the left. They were so enchanted by this that they put it on their currency. And so on one side you see the eclipse track. On the other side, again, the artist got a little too much freedom there, I think. I don't know what there's like a pink blob coming in to attack the solar system. I don't know what that is. The pink thingy, amoeba from space. In the bottom right, in England, has many great scientists, and they're on their currency. Charles Darwin is on the 10-pound note. He's shown here old and wise, he's bald with a big beard. But of course, he did his greatest work before he was 26. So really, they should put him up here looking like a dashing young man at 26. But I think it didn't carry didn't have the gravitas that would if you show him nearly dead. So what was his favorite animal from the Galapagos that helped him come up with? The finches, of course. So on this note, we have a hummingbird, okay? So I think the artist said, look, it's got a beak, all right? It's the beak that matters here, right? So the artist was not talking to the scientist in this. We can go to the Middle East. So these are countries celebrating their scientists. This is a wonderful thing. This is what tells me, because the United States is not really doing that, I think it's the rest of the world is going to rise up. And we had our century, it was like the 20th century, that the rest of the world is going to rise up and it's going to watch, okay? That's the trend line right now. Here's the Middle East. In Iraq, they went a little far back for this, but this is Ibn al-Hazm, who figured out how sight works. This is 1,000 years ago in Baghdad. A brilliant man who noticed what light did through the lens of your eye. Before him, people thought the way you see is a beam of light comes out of your eyes and you're illuminating what's in front of you. Okay? Like Superman sending X-rays out. But no, that's not how it works. He figured it out. He's on their currency. And we have I don't know what the unit is in Israel. It's an Israeli currency with Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein is not Israeli, but he's really smart, so everybody wants to claim him. That's what happens when you're really, really smart, everybody. But once again, these are great scientists. We'll keep going. Back to Europe. Euler from Switzerland. We have Euler, brilliant mathematician. Galileo in Italy, Carl Friedrich Gauss in the middle right. We have Faraday from England who invented electricity as we know it today. He developed the generator, how to turn sort of moving water and steam into electricity. We have Louis Pasteur in the bottom left, my man Isaac Newton on the £1 note. And then you look carefully. By the way, if you think in the world, what country sort of has the best marketing for their engineers? Like when you think of engineering, what country do you think of? Germany, of course. German engineering. You hear that all the time. And it's earned. They have some good engineers over there. It's earned. There could be good engineers in Poland, but you just never hear any marketing saying, Polish engineering, right? You just don't hear that. You just okay, German engineering. So then I looked at this 10 Deutschmarks of Gauss, and I said, what, if I zoom in, what do I see? I say, whoa, there is a mathematical distribution function on the currency. All right, this is... In America, we have museums with humans coexisting with dinosaurs. And in Germany, they have mathematical distribution functions they had, before the euro came in, on their currency. You don't have to know what this means, but you know it's important because it's on your currency. And you know it's associated with a great mind. This is the famous bell curve that Gauss discovered, basically. And it's a distribution function, so it's not even a regular math equation. It's a function. And so, I wonder, if you're a kid growing up in Germany and you see this, you're a little more comfortable with math. You don't have to be a mathematician, but you know it's there and you know it's important. And later on, you're not rejecting it, simply because you don't want to like it. I asked myself in America, do we have any scientists on our money? We actually have one. He's one. We got Ben. We got Ben Franklin on a $100 note. And I said, good, he was a big experimenter in electricity. Let me go find the icons related to his experiments in electricity. Is there a lightning bolt? No. Is there a kite where he had hung the key on? No. He invented the lightning rod. Let's go find that. No, he's not on our money because of his science, because he's a founding father. Do you know how important the lightning rod is? The lightning rod saves you two ways. It's a piece of metal at the top part of your building, and as you have a thunderstorm coming, as charges build up in the ground, they easily discharge into the air through this metal spike, reducing the electrical difference between the cloud and the ground, so that the lightning is no longer interested in striking you. And if it does strike you, it hits the lightning rod. This is cool. In his day, late 1700s, early 1800s, what are the tallest structures in any town? Churches. If you're lightning, what's the first thing you're going to hit? Churches. Back then, there was church-church warfare in the following way. A town's church would get hit by lightning, destroy the church. The other town would say, see, you're worshiping a false god over there. Come to our church. This went on all the time. Ben puts a lightning rod in his church. He's accused of heresy for thwarting the will of God. Then I thought, what God are you worshiping if this man, beer, wine drinking, womanizing man, thwarts the will of your God? What God is that? I don't know. It was at the expense of a hockey stick or something on this before. But I think hockey doesn't need to be on the currency to be popular, right? You got that one already. Right? I heard Manitoba just got a team back, is that right? Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it from a distance, but we've got an astronaut, the Canada arm, responsible for putting everything together in space. That arm just goes out, turns, grabs here, puts that, snares a satellite. That is a busy arm, and every time, no matter what angle it is, there's the maple leaf in full view, you know? And the funny thing, I don't know if you can see, but in the bottom one, there's like maple leaf from space coming in. I don't know if you can see. I worry that if you don't have these kinds of inspiring forces operating, that there can be a cost to society. There's a cost. So here's a headline I found back in the States. Ready? Lamenting the state of the school system. Half the schools in the district are below average. And I thought, that's kind of what an average would be. You figure? You expect about half below average. And half above, so that when you calculate the average, it's the average, right? So I think what was going on, maybe they felt that it was half were below standards or below grade level. But this was a mathematically illiterate journalist. And this is never a good thing if you're reporting the news. Here's another one, a little more subtle. 80% of airplane crash survivors studied the locations of exit doors on takeoff. This was a study about 8 years ago, which led to the change in the flight attendant rubric at the beginning. Now they include, take a look to where your nearest exit is. It could be behind you. We all hear, 10 years ago they never said that. It's because of this study. If you know where your exit doors are, 80% of the survivors knew where the exit doors were. There's a problem. Suppose 100% of the dead people studied the locations of the exit doors on takeoff. That would mean you're more likely to die if you look to where the exit doors were, but you'll never know this because they're dead. All right? Dead people, you can't interview dead people, okay? So this statistic is missing half of the data that should be there in order to make the proper judgment. So the education in the school system matters here for people to interpret information. You can't just say, let's go to space. You have to build that. You have to build that currency. You build the fluency, the mathematical fluency. You have to earn it in your educational system. One more here. You like this one? Okay. Member of the U.S. Congress. I've changed my views 360 degrees on that issue. Well, let me remind you what 360 degrees is. That's 360 degrees. You are still facing the same direction. Then I thought to myself, maybe he could have just been mathematically illiterate, but what could be worse is if he knew exactly what he was talking about. but didn't want you to think that he didn't change his mind at all, and then used his knowledge of math for diabolical purposes, right? So I don't know what's worse, actually. There's some folks in here old enough to remember what tomorrow looked like in the 1960s. This is not just the product of LSD thinking, okay? People actually thought about tomorrow all the time. You didn't have to go more than a week without finding an article in the major newspapers or the magazines. The city of tomorrow, the home of tomorrow, transportation of tomorrow, health of tomorrow. All the time these articles appear. Raise your hand if you remember what I'm talking about. The old-timers got the good seats down here, okay? How'd you guys get all the good seats? You got connections, that's what it is. Okay, you remember these, and they all stopped. You know when they stopped? When we stopped going to the moon. Check it out. All those articles were in the 1960s, early 70s. Late 70s came, that all stopped. 80s, all stopped. I claim that if you go back into space in a big way, be it international or even if it's just nation by nation, then the dream state goes to another place. The tomorrow is what technology and science can bring you, not just what is my next act. We have huge problems facing our culture and our civilization, in energy, in health, in security. You can't just wish those solutions to come. And for me, the greatest force of nature operating on the ambitions of who's going to be a scientist and engineer are the forces of the universe, space. I want to end with a reflection on what Carl Sagan had called the pale blue dot. He took a picture towards the center of the solar system, and we took a selfie from Earth. And it came to be known as the pale blue dot. This was reprised with the Cassini spacecraft just a year ago. Cassini is around Saturn. So Cassini went to the backside of Saturn. This is an actual photograph of Saturn eclipsing the sun. So sunlight peeking through the outer gaseous layer, and that's why there's a ring around Saturn. That's sunlight coming through the thinner parts of the atmosphere. The ring is illuminated from below. And if I could get the lights out, just to get some mood going here. If I may. Yeah, that's good. Oh yeah. Okay. So they said, if you're looking back towards the center of the solar system, there will be planets that are orbiting nearer to the sun than is Saturn. And so we zoom into the bottom right, and there is a small dot in the bottom right. That small dot is Earth. All 5 pixels of it. And I will end by reading the pale blue dot from the book of Carl. If you look at Earth from space, you see a dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you ever heard of. Every human being who ever lived. The aggregate of all our joys and sufferings. Thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hunter and forager. Every hero and coward. Every creator and destroyer of civilizations. Every king, every peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor, every explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust. Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and in triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of the dot on scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner of the dot. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity and all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. It's up to us. It's been said that astronomy is a humbling and, I might add, character-building experience. To my mind, there is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceit than this distant image of our tiny world. It underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly and compassionately with one another, and to preserve and cherish that pale blue dot, the only home we have ever known. Thank you all.
I'll call our President and Vice Chancellor to the podium to give thanks. Please join me in welcoming him.
We've been telling the University of Manitoba's story using the words that are on the front of this podium. Words like visionary,